We're good whenever we're ready. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
How's everyone doing? Good. 2:45 on Friday. Way to go, right? You are the hardcore inclusioneers. Everybody else was just pretending. You are here, right, at 2:45 on Friday. I looked at my session earlier today, and it said 60 participants, and I'd made live, who were supposed to be here. And, so 60 participants, and I'd only made 45 copies of the handouts, and I had this panic, and then reality took over. I'm like, no, it's fine. 60 people are here. So congratulations to all of you here to the end. So my job is to give you something worthwhile. So and I'm motivated. I'm motivated to give you something worthwhile, and I can tell you why. You'll only sort of be able to see this. This is my daughter. 20 minutes ago, she just got the award for tolerance at our school. We do monthly character traits awards at my school. I've never missed one of her awards ever since preschool. So I have to make this worthwhile, right? If we don't work hard and get something out of this, I'm just going to be annoyed. Because my daughter, which would be ironic because my daughter got the Tolerance Award. Anyway, all right. So my name is Erin Studer, and I'm the Executive Director at CHIME Institute, and my role there is to be the head of our TK through 8 charter school in Woodland Hills, California. And we are TK through 8. We have 4-year-olds to 14-year-olds. That's who I get to hang out with every day. We have 790 of them. We're the professional development school for California State University Northridge, and we're a national model for full inclusion. So we have no resource, we have no special day class. 160 of our students out of our 790 are students with special needs, and of those 160, about 60 of them are students with low incidence disabilities. And everybody is fully included using a process of co-teaching, collaboration, positive behavior interventions and supports. And we'll talk about more of that, right? My personal background, just to give you a quick highlight. So I'm originally from Iowa. Grew up in a town of 3,500 people, so if there's anything a little odd about me, we're just going to blame it on that today, okay? I say anything weird, you just go, well, he's from Iowa. I don't know. That's maybe why, okay? I came out to California in 1998, which means I've been here almost as long as I've been anywhere in my life, and I was a special education teacher. I have been an administrator at a non-public school for students with emotional and behavioral disabilities. I have been a high school dean. I have been an athletic director. I have been a principal. My wife says when I introduce myself this way, I sound like I can't keep a job, but I swear, these were promotions. I was moving up, I was moving on, right? And now I'm the director at CHIME. But this session today, and I've been doing a lot about this, thinking about this, is not about me. It's not about CHIME. It's about all of you and where you're at. And we're going to spend some time reflecting and action planning. And I'm going to hold up a little bit of a, I don't know if mirror is the right sort of, I don't know if I'm going to hold a mirror or a window. We've been throwing these metaphors around. Every session I go to, we're talking about mirrors and windows today. But I don't know if I'm going to hold up a mirror or a window. But I'm going to give you sort of a friendly colleague as to say, well, hey, this is what we do. Here's some of my thoughts on that, right? Because we're talking about practical application. We're not going to talk about theory. So before we get into all that, I'd actually like you to just do a quick turn and talk with your neighbor, and then I'm going to point mercilessly at some of you. Mercilessly means you have no choice and you cannot pass. You will have to share. So first I'll give you a turn and talk practice, and you're going to talk to your little elbow partner there about what's the most important or interesting or exciting thing you've learned at the collaborative conference so far. Okay? Take 2 minutes, 1 minute each, total talk time. What's the most interesting, exciting thing that you've learned at the collaborative conference so far? Find that elbow partner, go. Could you do me a favor and join them and make a triad? And yeah, you're as close as
Children do you have total again, did you say?
790
You have 790?
Yeah.
And so then 160 of them?
are children with special needs, and about 60 of them are students with
How many campuses?
low incidence.
One campus?
Yeah.
I'm going to be there visiting.
Oh, good.
Well, since I don't have a partner, what was the most challenging?
Oh, I tried to give you a partner.
I would so did you just start off with implementing?
Okay, start to finish up. Make sure everybody gets a chance to share. Okay, let's come back together as a group. As I said, I'm going to point at you mercilessly, and you shall have no recourse. You must share out. See, that was just like an open invitation. You tried to pass the microphone. No, no, no.
I shouldn't have fallen for that. I really liked learning about the autism, all the different resources from Captain that are available for free, and how to help really reach our students with autism.
Great. That's wonderful. That's a great thing to take away, having resources, having something to go to after this is all said and done. What's the most important thing you've gotten out of these days?
I think the flipped classroom,
Okay.
where we use Seesaw to record a lesson, and then the students can watch it before we do direct instruction. That gives you more of a chance to do hands-on practice with them.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. And we'll come right here.
I really was impressed with our keynote speaker. A lot of what he said was things that I knew, but it was nice to hear again.
The one that we just had?
Just had.
Okay, good.
And Joshua Sparrow. And I like the 8 questions he listed out, connecting with parents and really, working as a team with parents and being a learner from them, getting the information from them.
Great. How do we have those parent partnerships and use
Right.
and use those strong
Right.
parent partnerships for the betterment of our kids? Good. And we'll go right here to end it all. She's actually looking away from the microphone as if I'm not holding it in front of her. That's wonderful. Go ahead.
I don't know. Actually, sorry, I don't know what to say. I really liked all the information we got, all the resources, and all these different programs I didn't know about, and just things to help our families.
Okay, great. So thank you all for sharing. Let's hear a round of applause for the people who had no choice in the matter. Good. So what I heard you say is what you valued was resources that could build the capacity of yourself or your teachers. right? You valued getting an insight into different ways in which you could deliver instruction that might be more accessible to a wider variety of learners, and you valued figuring out ways to create strong partnerships with your parents, right? So what I'm going to present to you actually touches on all those things. So the kinds of things that you're hearing about, right, this week at this conference are the things that we actually are trying to implement to create our inclusive school environment. If you connected to the Inclusion Collaborative website, right, with this session, there's a link to the PowerPoint, and from that PowerPoint you can link to the Padlet, right? How many people use Padlet? Couple people. If you don't use Padlet, that's a resource that you can take away today. I didn't used to use Padlet, and I came here to present a few years ago, and I think I had some materials. I'd rushed out of my school that year, didn't have time to photocopy anything, and I brought like my materials to Kathy and Kristen. I said, "Is there, can I copy these somewhere, or can I? Do you make copies of the PowerPoint?" And they looked at me like I had chopped down a half acre of old growth forest, and they were like, "Well, you could just use Padlet." So I did. I discovered it. I went back to my hotel room and discovered Padlet, and I've been using it ever since. It's like a pin board for anything you want to put up. You can put up articles. You can put up, PowerPoint files, documents, etc. So if you go to our Padlet, you can link right off of it, or you can write down that big long, URL, which is padlet.com, Mr. Studer, CSUN, and then a bunch of letters and a number. And then just remember the password is October 28th. You can remember it because that is the date that you should go back and visit the Padlet. That's next Monday, right? You should turn right around and dive back into this work on October 28th. Or is it Sunday?
Sunday.
See, you should get a jump start on your work. But that's the password. There's a number of resources on there, and what I tend to do is continue to add resources as we go throughout the year, little surprises. So you go back to the Padlet, and then, hey, there's something else there, okay? And if you ever go to the Padlet and there's been nothing there, nothing new there for like 2 months, just email me and say, "Listen, you grumpy old man, put something new on the Padlet. You aren't following through on your promise." All right. This is my school. I had a question in the back while we were doing turn and talk. Has my school always been inclusive? Yes, it has. That was actually our mission as a school. We, as an organization, started infant and toddler programs and preschool programs back in the late 80s and early 90s, and then we established an elementary school in 2001. The purpose of our school is to be a research to demonstration practice site. So we don't do anything that research doesn't say is effective, right? And we use all of the research on inclusion to implement our classroom programs. And I kind of gave you some of the data and information about our school. Here's just some definitions when we talk about inclusion, right? We are fortunate enough to run an on-site training program that we do every fall. We invite schools from all over California and other places to come and do a 3-day training with us. And the first year we ran it, I sent out a pre-survey to all the schools, right? And I said, what kind of special education model do you have? Right? And we had 5 schools coming that year as the pilot year of our program. And they all wrote me back and said, "We're an inclusion model school." And I was like, "Oh, this is great. We're having a 3-day inclusion program, and you guys are all inclusion schools. This is going to be wonderful. We'll hold hands and sing. This will be lovely." And then I said on my second question, "What service delivery methods do you use to achieve your model?" And one school said, "We use push-in, pull-out, RSP, and SDC." I said, "Huh. Oh, that's interesting, right? And I surfaced this answer in the group. We have all these teachers together. And I said, we actually have a definitional problem about inclusion, don't we? Because you think inclusion means that children with special needs are on the campus somewhere, right? And I think inclusion means that children with disabilities are authentically engaged in the curriculum and activities of the general education classroom with their typically developing peers, right? So I think it's good when we talk about inclusive practices, like, let's set definitions. What do we mean by inclusion, and does everybody agree? So here we say inclusive schools welcome students of all ability levels. Students with mild to severe disabilities are full members of the classroom community using evidence-based practices. Important academic, social, ethical skills and attitudes are developed when students with various strengths, needs, and backgrounds learn together. Right? There is a federal definition around, federal compliance definition around inclusion as well. It's when 100% of your students are with special needs are included in the general education classroom 80% or more. Right? That's sort of the rule of thumb federal definition for an inclusion-oriented school. And then, of course, we have state, sort of outcomes and measures that we're looking for to measure the amount of time that students with disabilities spend with their non-disabled peers. Okay, so I want everybody to go ahead and look at this page that I gave you. And if you are on the video, if you're on the video or watching us on the video, this page is on the Padlet. Or for those of you who are in the audience and prefer to type into a document rather than write on a document, this is on the Padlet in a Word format, so you can pop it open and type in it. And for those of you who are here as school groups, I'm going out on a limb. I feel like this is a school group. No? Yes. Okay, good. And is this like a school group? How about here? Feel like a school group? No? You just met. How's it going? Oh, good. All right. So if you're here as a school group, feel free to fill one of these out collaboratively, right, as we go along. I don't want, we're all about collaboration. So I want us to take a minute and look at this top category where it says breaking down silos, all staff for all students. And when we talk about that phrase, breaking down silos, what I mean by that is across categories of employees at your school. General ed, special ed, administrator, counselor, speech and language pathologist, physical therapist, APE teacher. Are we collaborating? Are we genuinely partnering together, releasing our knowledge to one another so that we're working as a team on behalf of the kids? Okay? So I want you to take 3 to 4 minutes of either think time if you're on your own or talk time if you're in a group, and think about where is your school or district at right now when it comes to breaking down silos, right? And actually collaborating among experts at the school so that all staff are there for all kids. Okay? And just all you're going to do is just write some notes in that one little upper left-hand corner box. Questions? Go. About 30 more seconds. Okay, let's come back together as a group. And Alicia, you have a question. You had your hand up.
I don't know if we're that far yet, though, on the paper. What's a collaborative IEP?
We're not that far on that paper, but we can, I'll tell you, because we're talking about collaboration, when we write IEPs at my school, and I'm sure this happens at other schools too, but we work together. The staff who are stakeholders in the IEP, so general ed, special ed, service providers, et cetera, all work together to create one collaborative document, which will become the IEP, that we send home to the families in advance of the IEP, that contains all the elements of the IEP, right? Present levels, progress toward goals, new goals, etc. Proposed new goals, I should say, right? And will be the substance of what is discussed as an IEP team at the IEP meeting. But we've actually written it all together in one document. And we've collaborated on it together and talked about our observations and findings. One of the things that I think happens in environments where we don't collaborate together on the IEP process as the school staff is I will sit there and I will deliver my report. And then you will sit there and you deliver your report. But your report doesn't agree with my report. And then we'll sit here and go back as the professionals talking about what we think is really going on with the child. And Dad's sitting right there. Dad doesn't need that. He needed you to work that out far before he arrived, right? He doesn't need to sit here and watch two professionals go back and forth about what's going on with their child. That's the work that should have been done collaboratively before we ever get here. Not to like presuppose any outcomes of the IEP, but just be like, this is our school-based plan, right, for your child. So that's how we do collaborative IEPs, and that's actually, you know, don't tell other school districts, but that's actually what IDEA calls for. That is actually the sentence in IDEA, that we will provide a collaborative team report to parents.
Can you tell me what that collaboration looks like? Like, do you have a pre-meeting where you all meet and share your results, or do you do it through email?
There is some pre-meeting, but we leverage a lot of online access across a shared collaborative document.
Like shared Google Docs?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful not to have any identifying information if you're going to use Google Docs, so you'd have to come up with a pseudonym or a code number or something like that, you know, because you don't own the servers of Google, right? Don't break FERPA on my account, right? Don't. Well, Erin Studer said you should. No, I did not say no, right? But yes, using that kind of collaborative format appropriately can be really powerful, because then, you know, we don't all have to sit around the meeting. We're just online collaborating. Everybody gets a color. I've got my glass of Cabernet. I'm in my pajamas at home, and I'm writing the English language arts portion, right? Okay. So that is a way to go about it. So thank you for that question. Let's go back to this real quick in terms of this: are all staff working for all students? Okay. I have one question for you. How many people have heard the acronym MTSS? Multi-tiered Systems of Support. Is MTSS a special education initiative? No, that's been hammered into you, right? No, it is not a special education initiative. Good answer, right? MTSS would tell you that all staff is there for all students, right? So this top box, if you were sort of like, how does this work? How is this struggling? What should, you know, that top box is not about special education. So if you were running into some roadblocks there and thinking like, well, how is the special education team going to get everybody on board to collaborate and be all staff for all students, you asked the wrong question. MTSS has already told us that's what we should do. The Orange County Office of Ed is giving out $25,000 a pop for schools and districts to work on MTSS, right? And to be collaborative and to work across silos so that all systems in a school are pulling in the same direction. So some of that work should be happening in your schools and districts anyway and doesn't have a lot to do with special education. But I will tell you where the rubber meets the road in special education. How many of you are in the classroom right now, in a classroom of some kind? So a few of you, how many have students who receive speech and language services? How many of you have those speech and language services in a separate setting? This SLP will come and get your student, and good. How many of you know what happens in the speech and language therapy session? I appreciate the waving hands, right? But just by percentages, that means your confidence level just got cut in half, right? You're absolutely sure that you have students. You know that they get speech and language. You know a person called a speech and language pathologist comes and gets them, and we're pretty sure they do something, right? That's it, and you guys are actually better than most. I'll ask that question in a room of 100 educators. A lot of times those middle school and high school educators especially, darn middle school and high school educators, it's all right, that's where I taught. I was a middle school and high school educator, right? SLP comes, they take the student away, student comes back, right? And it's a black box, it's magic, we don't know. Maybe they start saying our controlled vowels more effectively by May, we're not sure, right? That's a silo of knowledge. Right? We should be collaborating so that we're working together for the betterment of the student wherever they are throughout the day.
I would say yes, except for because I've done high school, I love the whole expanse or whatever. But what I have found is generally there's more collaboration in terms of the speech and language person when they're working with students who have significant disabilities. There seems to be more collaboration with their teachers in that kind of a setting than those students that may have an articulate or may have whatever it is.
Right.
So I have noticed that there is a difference.
Right. And I'll repeat it back because I didn't hand you the mic, I'm sorry. But you were saying that for for students who have more significant speech and language issues, that you found there tends to be more collaboration than if it maybe is a mild impact from speech and language. Yeah, and I think that's true because obviously we're going to have more need and we're going to have to be more involved, right? Globally, my idea is that, more collaboration, more talk across these teams so that we're there for all students. Okay, so I think that's the first thing we start with, because we got to figure out how to work as teams to meet the needs of all kids. I'll give you an example. Tomorrow at my school, we're going to have an open house. I have 150 people coming to our school to come visit. It's kind of an admissions event because our school has an admissions process. And they're all going to be there. And you know what I'm going to tell them about our model so that they understand it? I'm going to tell them that at most schools in California, and actually at most schools in America, there are 2 to 3, sometimes 4 parallel schools running under the same roof. They may say that it's, Sunny Apple Elementary, and we have one sign out front that says Sunny Apple Elementary, but once you walk onto campus, you will understand that there's a program for typically developing students. There might be a program for your GATE students. There will definitely be a program for your special education students. There might be a program or some special programs for your English learners, depending on where you're at and what school. And so, in effect, we're practically running 4 schools under one roof. And what we've done to make that happen is we've taken our most valuable resource, you. You are a school's most valuable resource. Highly trained, expert adults, and we've made you work alone. Right? That is how we've conceptualized how education works. We'll find a really highly educated person, we'll make you work on your own. Good luck. Here's your keys. See you in May, right? Or June or whenever. But what's actually research tells us is most effective is that when we collaborate and we work as teams, that's when we can serve kids best. Because, you know, 2 heads are better than 1, 3 heads are better than 2, you get the idea. So that's sort of default upfront mindset about how schools run. Like, I haven't even gotten into the practices yet. We have 5 core practices at my school that we say are non-negotiables and we train on every year. Every year we'll find a way to do some kind of training on these 5 things. Okay? I have an old colleague of mine, he's retired now, and he'd probably be mad I called him old. Old just because I've known him a while. Barry Bennett, he's out of the University of Toronto, and he'd always tell me, I love America, you guys come up with the best ideas. You guys come up with the best ideas. You just don't use them for very long. Right? He said, up in Canada, we won't do any initiative whatsoever unless we've already decided that we will commit to it for a minimum of 5 years. That's our minimum, right? Some of your district's curriculum evaluation cycles are shorter than that, right? Yeah, that's a little problematic for continuity. So we train on these 5 things every year because these are the things that we think make it work. Co-teaching. Right? Which goes hand in hand with co-planning. You can't have co-teaching without co-planning. That's just teaching nearby someone else, right? You actually have to have created a plan so that you can co-teach with one another. School-wide positive behavior support. Every single staff on our campus is trained in how to do PBIS systems. Run them individually, run them in classrooms, run our school-wide systems. Right? We have a constructivist approach to teaching and learning. We believe that there is nothing we know as adults so well that we can just give it away. Right? We can't just make you know it how we know it. You actually have to construct your own learning. So our job is to facilitate your opportunity, right, to build your own knowledge. I say that we at CHIME are highly suspicious of desks in rows. We're pretty sure that desks in rows do not bring about knowledge, right? From our TK to our 8th grade class, all of our rooms are arranged in ways so that children can learn with and from one another, so that we can have constant learner dialogue going throughout the day, because all learning is socially mediated. How do I know this? Because we're humans. That's how humans learn, right? We learn with and from one another. A strong parent partnership program. We want to partner with our parents. Parents are an integral part to a child's education and upbringing, and we are also training all of our teachers to use universal design for learning. All of our teachers to use universal design for learning. Sometimes people will ask me, you know, well, we're not a school that decided that we were just, you know, going to start and be, you know, we weren't started as an inclusive school. We're doing change work. We actually have to do some things that, you know, we have to change some mindsets. Where should we start? You know, sometimes it's hard to pick, but I'll often, if I have to fall off the horse on one side or the other, I'll say universal design for learning. And this is why. It doesn't matter how many adults you put in a room. If it's a crappy lesson, it's a crappy lesson. That's just how it goes, right? Doesn't matter if I'm the special education co-teacher. I have a master's in special education. They did not give me a bag of magic dust to sprinkle over the lessons, right? That is not how co-teaching works, right? So it has to be a good, strong, universally designed lesson from the get-go, okay? So I want you to pick one of 2 things right now, either co-teaching or collaborative planning. Where are you now? Are you anywhere? Are your teachers co-teaching? Do you have a co-teaching model at your school? Or if you're not fully implementing co-teaching yet, do you have groups of teachers planning instruction? Is there some collaborative planning going on? Or maybe you have a full-blown system of both. I don't know. Take 3 to 4 minutes, choose one amongst your school group or one on your own, and discuss where you're at with either co-teaching or collaborative planning. Go. 30 more seconds. Okay, all right. I'm gonna turn on the mic, and I talked to a couple of groups, a couple I didn't, and now I'm gonna put some people on the spot, and then what will happen is no one will want to talk to me anymore when we do these little work sessions. But I'm going to put you on the spot. You can talk as little or as much as you want. But you were saying that you all are starting to do some work around co-teaching, but some of you are new and you're trying to figure out what it looks like or what you think it should look like. Can you tell me one or two challenges that you're having around that?
So I think one of my challenges is this is only my second year teaching, so I'm still trying to figure out my own teaching style. And now I'm partnered with a teacher who's basically an intern. She'd only ever worked as a para before. So it's been hard to manage my own learning as a teacher with her learning as a teacher and also to like blend how I want to teach versus how she wants to teach. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there are times where we tend to be just another presence in the room rather than co-teaching. Okay. But then we do a lot of like station teaching, and we do a lot of one teach, one observe. We're still trying to figure out the other forms of co-teaching.
Okay. Good. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. It sounds like you've received some training on the 5 models of co-teaching.
But I want more.
But you want more, a lot more. Okay, good. So I think that's one of the things that, kudos to your district in at least getting some training out there, right? I think I have run across a number of schools and districts that, they say, we're going to roll out co-teaching, and they just assign people to places. Right. And they don't provide the preliminary training, right? That, like, here are the 5 models, here's how they work, here's how you might think. Now I know I'm going to bring the microphone back because I feel like you want to say, but I still want more, or, but it wasn't really effective training, or what would you want to say?
This was our co-teaching training.
This was your
collaborative, and we were supposed to go to one of the co-teaching things, and the room filled up before we got there. So the co-teaching training we were supposed to get, we still haven't even got. I just knew those things from my own credential program. Okay. So I do think that our district has some work to do on getting that training that we need.
I see. Let's just make this a co-teaching training. No, okay, we won't do it. That's too responsive to the needs of the audience. Okay. All right, well, good. So they fashioned a plan, best laid plans of mice and men, right? Anybody know the poet? Yes. Burns. Robert Burns, good. Bonus points if we were giving them out. All right, so we're trying. We're getting there. We're toward a theory. But I think that's important. Like, you got to know the models, right? Because here's the thing. When you don't even know the models, it's really hard to implement, right? And so I think that's important. I'll direct you toward a colleague of mine, Wendy Morosky. You can look up her work. She's down at Cal State Northridge. I'm biased, right, because we're the professional development school for Cal State Northridge. But Wendy Morosky, she actually was a keynote here a couple of years ago. She does a lot on co-teaching, and one of the tools that she provides is called the SHARE worksheet, S-H-A-R-E, the SHARE worksheet, and it addresses that thing that you were talking about, working out one another's styles. Right? That's can be a huge barrier to effective co-teaching partnerships. I was the kind of teacher that if I had my stuff together to teach by 8:15 on Monday morning, I was like, yes, victory is mine, right? Like I'm 5 minutes ahead of the children. Like, that's all I needed. And then there are other teachers who are like, they cannot leave on Friday until everything's set. And if we have been paired to co-teach, that is a problem, right? And we're both competent adults and we can be flexible, but we got to surface that before we run into those issues. Otherwise, you're texting me on Saturday night saying, where the heck is my stuff, right? And I'm like, ease up, lady. I'm, watching football, right? So, and nobody wants those texts, right? And I'm going to give you a mic. Sorry, legal requirement.
I think one of the things that you just brought up in terms of, I think you need to have teachers have say in who their partners are going to be. So you can have all kinds of models of co-teaching, but you do need to make sure that there's that buy-in on the part of it, of the co-teachers. The other piece that I've found frustrating is there's times when districts might have more funding for certain kinds of things, and you'll have a better system set up in terms of co-teaching, like a better number of students on your caseload so that you can do more of that collaboration and planning and co-teaching with teachers. And then all of a sudden something happens and now you've got 8 schools, and you're running around trying to do that with twice as many students and twice as many classrooms, or, well, obviously with that many schools, maybe 3 times as many classrooms.
Right. Yeah.
So it's how, I guess the consistency. I mean, your situation, you've got a little bit more because it's one site and a certain control. How do we do it, I think, in the bigger picture?
Yeah. So this is, and I don't know that I'm going to have a great answer for you in a pragmatic sense, but I can give you globally what I think. But I'll go back to your first point about co-teachers having a say. You know what? I think if you're a school site leader and you're trying to pragmatically run your program, okay, whatever latitude you can exercise to put people in the place where they can be most successful, right? And we do that. At our school, we look, who are great co-teaching partnerships and et cetera. But sometimes people are new and you just don't know, or sometimes it just is, and we got to work through it, So I think you kind of get all 3 iterations, even if you're trying to match as successfully as you can. Anybody administrator? Okay. Anybody like a school site leader, like you're the head honcho? Okay. Administrative roles, what's...
I oversee the moderate severe program in our sites, and I'm implementing the inclusion program for our district.
Okay, so you direct the moderate severe special education programs, good.
Program specialist.
Program specialist.
I used to be, director, county level, district level, and SALPA director.
Okay.
And principal side.
Wow, all right. Had a way. I'm going to give you the mic. This is where I bang on leadership. This is where I say, if you're leadership, you have to be committed. This is your vision. You have to hold to the vision. If you are telling your people, we are going to do co-teaching, we are going to be inclusive schools, then you hold to it. You don't get distracted. You don't go flavor of the month. You don't go cut the budget on it because something else came up. You say, nope, this is actually how, at this district, in this school, in this whatever, we envision running school. And the advantage I have is not about being a single site. And there are practical ways that helps. But when I do my budget, when I assign my staff, when I load my classrooms, it revolves around an agreement that I've made about how I run my school. And so when other kinds of things come up, should we buy this? Should we spend on this? Can we add a staff here? Do we add a staff there? Do we buy this new program? It becomes guided by the fact that I have a vision for how we run the school. And that's where I kind of bang on leadership, and I say, you got to hold that out there.
But
right?
I've been a school site administrator,
Yep.
so I've been a principal, and I've also been a special ed coordinator, where, those ends of it. And sometimes that's not even high enough to have those says. Sometimes those says get made higher up the...
Totally agree.
And
Totally agree.
and I agree, as a principal, in some ways, I had almost more say in how that looked than the program coordinator had for special ed. Because I could sort of set things up and fight for it and do it.
Right.
I had an inclusion site, so
Yeah, and I could probably do 3 more dissertations on the iterations of power structures within school districts. Like, you'll go to some school districts and the superintendent is clearly in charge and running the show. And you'll go to other school districts and you'll go to the director of the X, Y, and Z program and you say, we want to implement this in the X, Y, and Z program. And they say, we should really talk to the principals, right? And that's just showing us where authority lies. And that's okay. I don't actually care where authority lies in a district. Just whoever the authority is, whether that's the superintendent or the principals or the program directors or whatever, if we're going to ask our people to do it, then leadership commits to it and holds the vision and makes the choices to allow it to perpetuate, right? Yeah. And that's not easy. That's not like, woo, poof, that happened, right? All right. I wanted to say something else about co-teaching, and now I forgot. I did talk about the share worksheet, so I think that's a good place to start. But again, I know what I was going to say. The reason you want to do make sure everybody receives training on all 5 models is only when you use all 5 models is co-teaching actually effective. I'll say it again. It bears repeating. Only when you use all 5 models is co-teaching actually effective. In fact, I know when my teachers are cheating and not doing all 5 models. Because I'll say, look, if I go into your classroom and I observe 5 times in a month and I walk in and I see what you're doing, and every time I walk in, you're either doing 1 teach, 1 support, or alternative group, you're cheating. You didn't actually co-plan. You don't have a co-plan lesson. How do I know? Because those are the 2 models by which a special educator can come into the room and say, what are we doing? How can I help? Go around, see who needs help. Okay. Right? That's all the collaboration that was necessary. Right? Or take those 4 kids and, okay, good. And I go, yep, co-teaching time. Check. That's not an authentic implementation of co-teaching. These 2 expert adults did not sit down and plan an excellent lesson for children, right? We just put another body in the room. That is not co-teaching, okay? All right, when we do co-teach, what are we co-teaching? We're co-teaching universally designed lessons, right? That 2 people are going to execute using one of the 5 models, okay? These lessons will have multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, multiple means of expression, okay? And I've got my little asterisk there. None of your other school-wide practices, co-teaching approaches, or MTSS systems can be a substitute for good UDL lessons. The primary driver in student learning and outcome is excellent teaching. That's it. That's it. Excellent first instruction. And you only get that with well-planned, universally designed lessons that, if you're fortunate enough to be doing co-teaching, are co-taught. Right? But I'll tell you, I would take a good UDL lesson taught by 1 person over a bad lesson taught by 2 every day. Okay? Katie Novak, many of you are familiar with her. She's a great resource on this and a lot smarter than I am about UDL, so I direct you to her if you haven't picked up her book or seen her blog. She's got a lot of great stuff. Okay? And I'm just going to click through this, but as you can see, we're always thinking about this when we are planning UDL lessons, right? And thinking through what are the needs of our students. What is their readiness? What is their interest? What is their learning profile? Right? That engagement, okay? What is our content? What is our process? What is our product? And by the way, people get caught up in this all the time and miss the point about standards versus product. This is one of the major hang-ups, and can actually, if you can clear this hang-up up, will relieve mindset problems for lots of teachers. Because they'll look at a child and go, you know what, there's no way they can pass the unit test. The unit test to this unit on the Civil War is 5 essay questions. They have to write 5 5-paragraph essay questions on this Civil War unit assessment. They need to be in the special education classroom. Au contraire, mon frère. Your 5 essay questions are not the standard. The product you have in your wisdom deemed appropriate is not the standard. You have to go back to the standard and say, what does the standard actually say that children can know or do? And how many different ways could they possibly do a thing, a product, to demonstrate that knowledge and skill? Sometimes we become so married to the curriculum that we invented and created, we have a hard time stepping out into multiple means of expression, right? I'll tell teachers a lot of times, you're going to have to kill some sacred cows, right? Meaning some of those projects, some of those essays, some of those tests that you just love and you kind of, put up on a pedestal. This is my favorite Civil War test, right? You're going to have to kill that cow, right? Because that is not multiple means of expression, nor is it the standard. Okay? And then you can think through the different accommodations, modifications, or extensions that kids with different needs might need. I'm just going to click through some pictures here. The other thing in our fully inclusive model is everyone's curriculum, everyone's instruction is driven by the general education standards. And when, sometimes when we look at inclusion, we think inclusion means the child is in the room, but there's nothing authentic for them to engage in. We have to, in our model, and you guys need to decide about what you're going to do in your models, in our model, we modify and accommodate the materials to meet the needs of the child, but everything is driven by the same general education standard. We're all going to read The Red Fern Grows. But some students are going to get some additional supports. Some students are going to get an accommodated version of Where the Red Fern Grows, where we've actually taken the text and added pictures to it, taken the text and highlighted key vocabulary, taken the text and highlighted key plot pieces, right? Key pieces of the plot to make sure kids get those. Some of our students are students with intellectual disabilities, perhaps, who are on a modified curriculum. And we're going to provide them with a modified text. Everybody's going to get a copy of Red Fern Grows. Everybody's going to listen to it together as a class. But some of you are also going to get the accommodated version that we've made. And some of you are also may get the modified version that we made that has meaningful information for you, paired with pictures, perhaps a symbol set you're familiar with. And it's kind of hard to see, but there are Dolch sight words highlighted in that modified text so that you can practice your IEP goal of identification of sight words. Right? See, this also kind of gets into policy and practices of districts, but I know, for example, some districts will automatically default to have you put on a separate curriculum if you are on the alternate curriculum. There will be a whole other curriculum for you. I don't know if this happens in your districts. In LAUSD, not to pick on my LAUSD friends, but we have a curriculum called the unique curriculum. So if you are on an alternative curriculum, you automatically do the unique curriculum. That makes it really hard to include you. If by default we are saying you should be doing something else, right? There are ways to work around that, but if you're going, I guess the bottom line point, no matter where you are or what you're doing, if you're going to include students in a fully inclusive classroom, you need to make sure that the materials that you're providing them are authentically engaging at their academic level, right? Okay, and we'll see some others, a typical quiz on the left, a modified quiz on the right, pairing pictures with all of the things that are up and around the room, using research-based classroom organizing systems like CHIME. How many people use CHIME? Oh, my poor non-hand-raising people. Go ahead and write that down, jot it down. CHIME, CHAMPS. And right below it, write achieve. I won't spell achieve out loud because I'll spell it wrong and then I'll lose all credibility with you. The second grade teacher's like, you sure will. All right. CHAMPS is an organizational routine for your classroom. You can Google it. There's all kinds of wonderful, smart people who've done more with it than I have. But each letter stands for something, right? Like conversation, help, activity, movement. Right? And before I release you to go do an activity, we actually go through what my expectations are. This is a quiz, so we actually have no talking in conversation. Or this is partner work, so we're going to use our whisper voices. Right? If you need help, ask 3 then me. Or if you need help, since this is a quiz, raise your hand. You can only ask me for help. Right? What is the activity? Can I be up and around out of my desk, or do I need to be sitting down? Right? That's actually for movement, but you get the idea, right? So I have clarified all the expectations and routines before we've ever started the activity. A lot of times we'll talk about how our students with special needs are difficult to include because they have behavioral challenges and are often off task. But then research tells us that off-task behavior is almost 85% of the time because they don't have clear expectations. They don't know what it looks like, examples and non-examples, to behave in the classroom. And that's actually part of the routine. Can everybody give me whisper voices? Good. Now give me your loud voice. Now give me your table talk voice, right? Now give me no voice. And now let's do whisper voice again. Okay, good. Conversation is whisper voice, right? You see how we did it? And then we've clarified our expectation and routine. And then when we go back to that and somebody's not using their whisper voice, I say, remember, we said in conversation we're going to use whisper voices, okay? All right, remember our agreements. Thank you. Go ahead. Right? And on we go. We're not stop, no, don't, shh. Right? Good gravy. Who'd want to work in that environment? Right? No, we just set up our agreements. And then we remind one another of those agreements, and on we go. Right? So if you don't use CHAMPS, Achieve is a high school, middle school version of the same thing. Okay? All right. And that kind of leads us into positive behavior support. So I want everybody to turn over on the back. It says school-wide positive behavior interventions and support. Talk with your team or think on your own. What does it look like now? That little left-hand box. What are you doing now for positive behavior interventions and support? Take 3 minutes of talk time. Go. About 30 more seconds. Okay, let's come back together as a large group. I'm going to pick on this group over here. You took the microphone last time. I'm going to hand it to your colleague. There you go. Right? Yep, you're like, I'm with you. What do you? Yep. Okay, so you guys were having a chat about what you do right now with positive behavior support. Can you name a thing, couple things? How do you utilize PBIS systems?
We use aspects of PBIS, not specifically PBIS, but we do have a lot of, positive things going on at each school, but we have social skills curriculum. We have, classrooms have their expectations. They teach the kids their expectations, but we don't have a specific PBIS program in our district.
And that's okay. I mean, you don't have to have like, oh, this is this program, but I think using the principles of PBIS are important. If I walked into your classrooms, do you think I'd see individual systems, classroom systems, school-wide systems?
Well, at one of our schools, they have called the RIPS. They have the RIPS program. That's a school-wide initiative. So each school has their own thing. Teachers have their own thing. I mean, it's not district-wide. It's by school. They all have their own.
Okay. Can you hand the mic? Maybe tell me one or two things, or tell all of us one or two things about your school-wide program you have.
School-wide program is through all aspects of the school, expected behaviors in the hallways, on the playground, in the multipurpose room, in the classrooms, in the office, in the library, in the computer lab. So all the teachers have the same language. All the teachers have the same reactions. And we have a special person who comes in twice a year and does live assemblies all throughout the whole school.
Great.
And then that same person comes in and we have our central limits values, responsibility, integrity, support, and perseverance. There's the P.
Great.
And then Hugh comes in and does 2 classes at a time at a grade level, each grade level twice a year individually. He'll come into classrooms and talk about responsibility, or he'll talk about perseverance. And he has it set per grade level so the kids never get the same talk twice. So throughout their kindergarten through 5th grade years at our school, they will have all his talks and all his get to share their RIPS values.
Great.
And then after a trimester, 4 kids are chosen per class, demonstrating all those 4 things.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So you've got clarity, you've got consistency, you've got a common language, you have common implementation across your school. That's terrific. I think that is a good example of some PBIS. I'll give you just 2 sort of things to look for or look out for. I have the privilege of getting to visit lots of different schools and across California, LA, a little bit other places. But one of the things that is often very consistent when I go to visit other schools is I'll go and they're usually trying some initiative, co-teaching or something, and I'll walk through and then the principal of the school will say, well, what'd you think? Hey, how'd it go, etc. And I'd say, well, I can tell you that I know exactly how kids get in trouble and what happens when they do. And they said, what do you mean? I said, in every classroom I went into, there was a poster about what not to do and the consequences that would happen when you did them. And they're kind of like, yeah? I said, I have no idea what happens when kids do what they're supposed to do. Well, what do you mean? I said, I've seen not one poster that tells me what happens when you do well, when you do the expected behavior. Like what are the incentives? What are the good things that happen? I don't see that on a sign. I don't see that in a system. I don't see it anywhere. And then every once in a while, I'll get a principal that tells me, well, you know what? We're not really into that. We're not really into rewarding kids for doing what is expected. That's not the real world. And I'll just stare that principal right in the face and be like, really? I have not had that experience in the real world. I actually find that it is when I do what I am expected to do that I am rewarded. And I'll tell you exactly how this works. I'm in education for the money. I said, no, I am 100% absolutely true. I'm in education for the money. Do you know how I know? Because if they stop paying me, I won't come back, right? Like I love everybody. I love everybody at my school, but if they stop depositing paychecks into my account, I won't come anymore. My wife won't let me. I will need to move on, right? And why do they deposit checks into my checking account? Because I do exactly what is expected of me. I have a job description, and I do my job, and I do it well, and I get rewarded for my job. Do I have intrinsic motivation for my job? Yes, I do. I love what I do. I love being with the kids. I love being with the teachers. I could have chosen 500 other careers. I didn't. I chose this one. But I also like a little extrinsic, attaboy. It lands in my bank account every 2 weeks, right? And I know the system, and I know how it works, and it's been very clearly explained to me. And it's very predictable, right? Those little humans that you have in your classrooms are not different. Yes, they're intrinsically motivated. Yes, they like the topics that they like and the activities that's all good. That's fine. But I think we got to understand, how do we sort of reinforce the behavior that we want? Because what a behaviorist will tell us is only the behavior that is reinforced will be repeated. Only the behavior that is reinforced will be repeated, right? And too often we spend our teacher talk time, and this is a great thing. If you want a master's thesis or a dissertation project, monitor teacher talk time. And see how much of their teacher talk time is focused on correcting behavior versus reinforcing behavior. You walk into a classroom, any classroom in America, teacher says, okay, everybody, let's come to the carpet. Everybody comes to the carpet. 21 kids come to the carpet, but Mary doesn't come to the carpet. It's teacher choice time, PBIS time. You can say, Mary, come to the carpet. Mary, to the carpet. Mary, carpet, carpet. Right? Like she's a golden retriever. Right? Or you can look at the 21 other kids who just did exactly what you asked them. Right? And say, good job, Jose. Thank you, Franklin. Crisscross applesauce. Susie, nice job. Thank you for coming to the carpet. Good job. Thank you. Oh, everybody looks so good. We're ready at the carpet. And you know what? 8 times out of 10, not 10 out of 10, 8 times out of 10, Mary comes to the carpet. Huh, what's going on over there? That looks great, right? And here comes Mary. And when Mary gets here, what do we say? Do we go, finally, Mary? No. We say, thank you, Mary. Good job. Right here, crisscross applesauce. Thank you. Right? That's a PBIS choice, right? You can either focus on what's going well in your classroom, and I challenge anyone to think differently. 90% of the time, what is happening on a child-by-child basis is right on target. And yet we just let that go. And then we focus on the 10%. And then we go, oh, all I've done all day is tell kids to hush and sit down and don't do that and put that away, right? But if we really tracked it, we'd actually find that that's like 5 kids. And the other 20 did pretty well. And we could have spent our day noticing and reinforcing their positive behavior, right? So all PBIS systems, whether they are clear, comprehensive, or etc., should be based on that premise, that we are constantly catching and rewarding what is working, right? And there's a number of different things that we use at our school. In a similar way, at all of our playgrounds, we have the rules posted for each piece of equipment. We talk about our community agreements: be safe, be respectful, be responsible. That's right out of Safe and Civil Schools and Second Step. So you guys get you get the idea. Did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, we also.
Go ahead. No,
We
not
also
at all.
have RIPS tickets for the kids. So when we catch a student who is doing what they're supposed to be doing, we walk out to recess with them. We see them during our assemblies. We see them in our classrooms. They get a RIPS ticket. And then we have a drawing once a month where they actually go out with the principal and they have pizza with the principal. And they get a little like charm, and a note goes home to the families. And they say, and then something goes back that day saying, "Here, your child had pizza with the principal today because they were our RIPS Citizen of the Year."
That's great. We do the same thing, but I'm going to steal the pizza with the principal. That's great. I mean, we don't do that. And we give away like these little wristbands with the character trait on them. But I got to tell you, I think those kids would be like, give me the pizza. Like I don't need the wristband. I'll take the pizza, please. Okay. One of the other. This isn't the same. This isn't the exact same trophy. This is a high five trophy. But we also figure out ways to put developmentally appropriate skills into our PBIS system. I'll give you a brief example. One of the things, as I said, we think is very important is collaboration, being able to work collaboratively and being able to work as a group. So back in our TK and K, we have structured playtime in TK and K. We call it free choice time, and we intentionally put games out, and kids are required to play together. Why? Because one, we think it's still developmentally appropriate for 4 and 5-year-olds to be learning how to play, right? And two, that what they learn through play will actually be critically important for our style of constructivist instruction. They need to learn how to play together so that they can then learn how to work together. And then by the time we get into 3rd grade, we're refining that skill of collaboration. So we have a cooperation cup in every 3rd grade classroom. No other classrooms have it. Why? Because developmentally we think it belongs here in 3rd grade. So there's these huge trophies in every classroom. And if you win the cooperation cup for the week, the trophy gets to go on your table group, right? And it's like the Stanley Cup, man. They parade that baby around. They get to shine it, right? They think that you get to shine the trophy now. Go ahead, right? And that's a PBIS system. We didn't give anybody anything. It's not pizza, it's not chips, it's not a prize, it's a cup. They don't even get to keep it. It doesn't even go home. We make them shine it, right? But they love it, right? And we've tied it into what is developmentally appropriate. Here's the thing. I'll say one more thing about PBIS and then we got to move on. One of the things that this relates to inclusion is that so often we go back to that behavior piece around inclusion. And these kids, they have behavioral concerns and therefore they cannot be included in the general education classroom, right? We need to make sure before we start making those choices about what kinds of educational environments that a child should be in, that we actually have good research-based behavioral approaches in that general education classroom, right? I'm going to pick on a system, and if this is your system in your classroom, I'm only sort of sorry, right? Some people will implement tourniquet systems. Anybody ever seen a tourniquet system? Okay? So it's a big board up with all these tourniquets. It's red, green, everybody starts on green, and then you can go to yellow, and then you can go to red. It's like, soccer in a classroom, okay? And how does tourniquet get implemented? There may be people who implement tourniquet really well. I don't know. I've never seen it. But maybe there are. But what I usually see is someone misbehaves. And the teacher comes up to that student and says, you can't do that. That is not acceptable. You go turn a card. And they have to go on their own up to the tourniquet, right? Little board, flip their own card. Please do this march of shame in front of everyone, self-punish, and return to do what you weren't doing 2 minutes ago that you got, in trouble for not doing. I don't know where we think we're going to get with that.
The issue is when the card's red now.
Right, and now what do we,
Now where are we going?
Outside of the fact that eventually the whole thing just fades and nobody cares about the darn cards anyway. But what are we doing there, right? What are we doing? We're exerting coercive control because we're in charge, right? And I think there's other ways we could have been proactive about that. I think there's other ways that we could have been thinking about what that behavior was communicating to us that would guide our response to that student. Or we could have not used that system at all and maybe reminded them about what they're not earning, right? Instead of taking things away or shaming them by turning a card, right? But then here's the real insidious thing that happens. When that kid says, no, damn it, and throws their chair down, I'm not going to turn that card, and runs out of the room, we go, that kid can't be in general ed. It's a real behavior challenge, right? I can't chase a kid all day, right? Wait, was this a good system in the first place? The false assumption is the teacher was right and had a great PBIS system. I don't know that's true, right? So sometimes when we're looking at placements for kids, we isolate a child's behavior without looking at the system in which that behavior occurred, right? All right. Paraprofessional support. Some people ask, do we use paraprofessional supports at our school? Yes, we do. We use paraprofessional supports. How do we figure out how many we need? We base it on the needs of the kids. Like I said, we have about 60 kids who have significant disabilities that occur in less than 3% of the population. So we'll probably have a few more kids with moderate to severe disabilities than you might have at your school campuses. So we might use a few more paraprofessionals than you do. But we insist on training them well, and we insist on using them well. So one of the systems that we have, I'll just describe it. I don't know that it's possible for your schools, but maybe you can figure out a way that you could implement something like it, is we have a 4-semester training program for our paraprofessionals. So every Friday morning, paraprofessionals come to our school at 7:20, and they have an hour of training in their designated class with one of our special education teachers. And while they're in class, right, receiving training on how to be a highly effective paraprofessional, the general education teachers are out on the yard doing the drop-off duty, right, supervising the yard and working the drop-off line. And they do that every Friday. Why? Because we all agree that we want highly trained paraprofessionals, okay? I direct you to a very smart person about use of paraprofessionals, Michael Giangreco. He's a professor out of the University of Vermont. He has an article that you can link to called Helping or Hovering, right? That talks about the effective use of paraprofessionals. And I'll give you one acronym that you can use that we train our paras on, and you can, think about how it might be applied in your environments. What we know about paraprofessionals is they can create dependence, adult dependence, in kids. So we make sure that none of our students who receive additional adult support receive it from the same adult all day long. We intentionally rotate our paras throughout the day. And we insist that our paraprofessionals generalize their support to the classroom outside of their target student, right? So they're not standing by that student all day, they're not sitting by that student all day, right? Some people will say, well, I'm just sitting by the student, I'm not helping them with their work, they're independent. Oh, no, right? It's called proximity control. I can sit an adult by any kid with a disability or typically developing, and their ability to attend and behave just went up by 50%. Why? Because there's an adult right there. What are you, crazy? Right? So we're working toward autonomy and autonomous sort of decision making and input from all of our kids. So we train our paraprofessionals to do MISGO. Move in, squat down, get out. What should that look like? You need something? Move in. What do you need? Can I help you? Okay, let's do that right there. Good. Get out. Moving on. Circulating the classroom. Generalizing my support. I'm here for all of you students. I'm not Sarah's para, right? I'm here for everybody. Okay? And then a couple of, I know we started with co-teaching. And so we've kind of talked about this a little bit. I want to say one quick thing about co-teaching, then we're going to use our last few minutes. Schools and school districts, if you're going to do co-teaching, I think on some level need to think through what that plan looks like, right? Particularly around staffing. So I'm not saying you got to hire more staff. I'm saying you got to look at who your staff are and how you're utilizing them and how you're scheduling them, right? But one of Michael Giangreco's other contributions to the field that I like very much is he talks about inclusive schools do not think about caseloads. They think about special educator density. So in a typical special education model, we go, okay, we've got, these 75 kids with special needs at this school, we need how many special educators? It's like we do a division problem, right? We say, well, the state maximum caseload is, or our union agreement says, right? And we take that number and we divide it into 75 and we get, oh, that looks like 3 special education teachers, right? So that's a pretty typical model of figuring out how we staff. In an inclusive oriented school, Giangreco suggests we should look at special educator density, where we take the number of special educators and divide it into the total number of students. Total number of students. Now this is in inclusion model schools. So 100% of the kids are in general education 80% of the time or more. So almost this entire model is being done through co-teaching. And he said that if you have a special educator density of 1 to 80, up to 1 to 120, you're a pretty happy school. 120 to 150, doing okay. Much more than 150 to 200, you're getting a little grumpy, right? Why? Because if you're going to run a full co-teaching model, the expertise of those special education teachers have to be in the classroom supporting all children, right? Because all of those learners are in the room at that point. Special education students, English learners, kids with socioeconomic impacts, lack of access to print-rich materials, whatever. We've got all the learners together in the room, and we need that sufficient amount of density of special education co-teachers to be in there in the general education classroom. So if you're at that level, you're a superintendent, you're whatever, you're thinking about staffing, think about a different way. If you're really going to say, hey, we're going to be an inclusion-oriented school, think about your staffing and how you're having people work and how many of those co-teachers you might need within your model.
Is that article on the Padlet?
You know what? I will see if I can put it on the Padlet. There's actually, that article is called A Revenue Neutral Model of Going to an Inclusion-Oriented School. Because within his hypothesis, you actually don't have to hire anybody new. You just have to move them into different roles, right? Change the way in which they work, right? So I'll see if I can get that up there as well. Yeah.
That's the one thing I keep hearing. We don't have
It's called a rev.
For inclusion, is that what you're saying? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Michael Giangreco. Yeah.
So here's the big concern with that.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. Where am I going to get special ed teachers from?
Well, so I'll put the article up there. Right. I think the argument would be you might not need more special educators than you already have.
Okay.
It's the revenue neutral model says we're actually just shifting the way in which people work.
Okay. Oh, no,
Right.
I see it versus having one.
You don't have to go hire a bunch of people. You just have to shift the way they work and how and actually how general education teachers work too.
Because a lot of times you'll have an elementary school with, let's say, 700, 750 kids, and you might only have like 1.2, which really wouldn't be what you would be hurting there.
Right. Right.
So, but a lot of times that's what you will see, something like that.
Right. And so I think there's a lot of thinking to go through, and there are full-on districts that have done some large-scale inclusion work, like Ravenswood up here in Northern California has done some of this on a school-based model. Oh gosh, now I'm going to forget the name. Willard Middle School in the Oakland area has done it on a school-based model where they weren't inclusive one year, and they ripped the Band-Aid right off, and the next year they were inclusive. And they didn't change how many people they hired, right? So, and some people are like, do we do a change process where it's 3 to 4 years, or do we do a, rip the Band-Aid off and one year we were not, and this year we are? I've seen different people do it different ways. I will tell you, at Willard Middle School, the speech and language pathologist and the principal were deeply dedicated to this, right? That leadership piece, like, nope. This is what we're doing. Interesting thing also about that middle school is that the elementary schools that send to them are not inclusive, and the high school that they send to is not inclusive, but they are, right? Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing. We're up against it. I'm going to just hold this up. I'm so sorry we didn't get to it, but we did have some nice conversations and sharing. This is an action plan that I gave you. This is the action plan that we give out to all the schools that come and attend our 3-day training. I'm giving it to you because I do think it's a nice little short planning guide to think through how you can start to change at your school. How can you start to change at your district? And it kind of goes through what would be a reasonable and attainable goal. Who would you need to do that? What are your roadblocks? What are your resources? What additional resources would you need? First, then next, right? Cotter, he's one of these business change people. What he says is that the first element necessary for change is urgency, and then a guiding coalition, right? So here's this my last thing with my last minute. The thing about urgency is that it's really hard to manufacture. So if there's no urgency around inclusion in your school districts, you might feel like you're pushing uphill. So I recommend to go ahead and grab onto something else that is the urgent thing of the day, right? And I guarantee you, whatever it is, whether it's test scores, whether it's MTSS, whether it's, whatever.
It's the dashboard.
If it's the dashboard, if that feels urgent, I guarantee you can make your case to increase the inclusive environments by grabbing onto that urgent thing. Don't make up another urgent thing, right? Okay? So, and then the other thing I'll say is that the next piece after urgency is a strong guiding coalition. So you have to figure out who is at your school, who is at your district, that could join you, right? To be that guiding coalition to move change down the road. Because schools are inherently conservative organizations. If you don't think so, ask yourself why we still wear clothes from the 1400s to graduate, right? The gown and the silly mortarboard were invented hundreds of years ago, and we still wear them, and we'll even convince ourselves we look good. Don't they look great, right? Wearing that monk's robe, special, right? We are inherently conservative organizations. So change is never going to happen with one person. You got to have your team. So I wish you nothing but the very best, and thank you so much for spending time with me. All right.